I'm David Heitler-Clevens.
And I'm Rodney Whittenberg. And this is Music for the New Revolution.
Hey, everybody. How you doing? It's 2021.
Yay. I'm so glad it's 2021. Everything magically got better in 2021, didn't it? No, I know it didn't.
Be careful what you wish for. Sometimes we can go from the frying pan into the fire. Ah!
Yes. So we're going to have a frank and honest discussion about race, which we had intended to do this a while back, and through mistakes of my own, it did not. Anyway, but and I just want to give props to Reggie Harris and Greg Greenway for inspiring this idea, because they've been doing this show called Deeper Than the Skin together, where they each tell their own stories about race and about whiteness and blackness and racism, and I found it really, really moving, and I thought, it'd be a great opportunity for us to also not do something like they did, but inspired by them.
Yes, that's awesome, David. And, as a person of color, race is always on my mind, not because I want it to be, but as I say in my one-man show, because everyone keeps reminding me.
Yeah.
So where should we start, David, on this?
Well, I think we should start with you, because as you said, you're a person of color, and, white people have hogged the spotlight for 400 or more years, and I think we should start with you telling your story. I will mostly listen and maybe once in a while ask you questions, but
Oh, my story. Well, I did. So my story with race is I always think of it as it's complicated in that when I was a kid growing up, my dad really worked to keep a lot of the predatory and negative aspects of race away from us as kids. At the same time, he put us in situations where it was it was just always there. And what I mean by that is, my dad was someone who was very upwardly mobile, assimilating. He was the first black salesperson at Sears in Philadelphia at a place called in an area near Upper Darby, and in the late 50s, early 60s, he was the first to be selling air conditioners and refrigerators, which today may sound like, oh, that's not a big deal. What's the big deal? But back in the late 50s, early 60s, you could make a lot of money doing that, and he was a natural salesperson, but he was the only one of color. And one of the stories he told often was there was a store meeting, and everyone in the store was brought into this giant meeting, and the manager of the store got up in front of everybody and said, you got to sell them inwards. You got to get them inwards in here and spend their inward money. And the way my dad tells the story, there were two people of color in the room, and the guy left, and later that night he found the store manager and beat the hell out of him, and obviously was fired. And my dad went on to be the number one salesperson in not only in that store but in the company, and he raised a doctor, a writer, and myself. So it's such a hard thing to know about how to fight and combat racism and what it means. And so my dad decided to suck it down and go on and show them that he was better than everybody else. And by doing better, not just by saying it, but by doing it. And, I remember the first time I encountered it where it was smacked in my face when we had moved to the suburbs. We were walking down the street going to catch the trolley, and in the town that I grew up in, it was kind of split between black and white, and I was running ahead of my mom and my sister, and some kids across the street who were older yelled, "Look at that little N-word." And I looked around because I didn't know who they were talking about. And it was like, oh, they mean me. Oh, well, what does that word mean? Well, why are they calling me that? Or what is that all about? And so it was kind of an interesting way of growing up, in that we were not like this. It wasn't a lot of African or Afrocentric culture. At the same time, there was. I mean, it's kind of weird. I was raised Catholic, and so the church we went to was mixed, and we were always vacationing in these very, very interesting places. Like one of the other stories I remember is going as a very young kid. We flew to Buffalo and to go to Niagara Falls, and when we went out to the pool in the hotel in Buffalo, everyone left. We were the only black family there, and everybody got up and left. And someone must have broken a glass or a bottle and threw it in the bottom of the pool, because there was a glass in the pool, and my dad cut his foot on it. But he didn't say anything to us as kids that, oh, there's racism and this is why they did that. He was more like, well, we have the whole pool to ourselves. We're like kings, And so it's been an interesting or unique journey I've been on in relation to race. And I do think one of the things I appreciate that my dad gave me was just the ability to see myself and the world as individuals, and not as the color they are. But I've also think that it's important to see color. I think one of the things that is a mistake in saying you don't see color is that you miss a part of who the person is. Exactly. Yeah, and in not seeing who they are, you're also missing. You're missing everything. I mean,
right. Yeah, when somebody says I don't see color, I like to say, have you had your eyes checked recently?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what they mean to say is that you know what they mean. They're like, I know. They don't. They're not going to judge you on your color, but by not judging you on your color, they're also not seeing all of you. It's almost like saying we're not going to see your color because your color will give us a negative opinion of you.
Right. So, it should be possible to see without the judging negatively.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah. Race is an interesting. It's a deep, not just interesting. I shouldn't say it that way. It's a deep subject.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm curious when your father would kind of put a positive spin on the thing, like all the white people leaving the pool and saying, we have the whole pool to ourselves. Do you remember how you felt about that at that time?
I thought my dad was a superhero. I thought he was some kind of magical king or something that people would kind of move out of the way in his presence or something. It was very
interesting.
I thought, wow, he has a lot of power. We have this whole pool, giant pool, and everything to ourselves, and this is great. Yeah, it got harder though the older I got and the more places we went, and also what was going on in the world. I mean, so Martin Luther King is assassinated in 1968, and I these things blur together in my memory, but I think 1968 or 1969 was the summer we went to Peekskill Dude Ranch for a vacation. Where we were not only the only black family at the ranch, I think we were the only black family for miles and miles, because it was in the Catskills. And it was interesting. I mean, how do I explain it? We walk into this room where everyone is doing family-style dining, and so families are sitting with each other, and we were late getting there because of the train. It was some rainy weather and stuff. And I remember we walked into this room, and the entire room turned and looked at us. And then almost in unison, the entire room turned and looked at the table where there was room for us to sit with this other family. And we went down and sat with them, and they were very uncomfortable with us sitting with them. And, you know, as a kid, you pick up on this stuff, but you don't know what it means, you know. And, but, you know, my dad was just, hello, how you doing, Lou Whittenberg? You know, he was just like, I belong here, I deserve to be here, and I'm not going to acknowledge that everyone in the room is uncomfortable. So,
Yeah.
That's kind of how I felt. It was kind of always a little confusing. Also because, too, at those situations, some parents were fine with letting their kids play with us in places like that, and other parents were like, no, this is not happening, and they were taking their kids away from us.
Yeah.
But, you know, so it was...
Well, it sounds like your father had a lot of grace and dignity in these awful situations, but he must have had to submerge a lot of pain. Do you feel like that was true? Do you feel like that came out at some point?
I do. I think there was, you know, I think there was some frustration and pain in all of this, because I think he never felt that he was good enough, and that he was always aspiring to wanting to be better, but also needing that, like also almost craving that some kind of validation that would make him okay. And and it was always strange, because he was an amazing guy in that he would purposely do things that would cause him great stress and that he was afraid of, but he would do them anyway. I think that's one thing I'm very happy I inherited from him. I mean, he hated driving, and I know, and he also would fear going through towns or places that he knew could be dangerous, but at the same time he would go. And so as a family, you know, we would drive down to Cape May, and it was always weird, because I'd see this fear on my dad's face as we're driving down the highway. He just hated being on a highway and driving, and yet we went anyway. You know, and he had these bold ideas. I mean, we almost bought a hotel in Wildwood, and I think the deciding factor was what it was like to be there in the winter. We had gone down, I think, one summer. We had gone and stayed at this hotel motel kind of thing in Wildwood, maybe about 5 times, because my dad was looking at it, and he was working on the financing and figuring out how he could afford this, and convincing us that it would be great summer jobs for us to take care of the hotel, you know. And he goes, look, you could swim part of the day in the pool with the guests, and then you could clean the rooms. And my sister and I are looking like, yeah, okay, right. That doesn't sound like fun. But and we went down in the winter, like one time, and that was it. We were like, my mom and my sister and I, like, no, we're not doing this. we're not living here in the winter. This is depressing. So, but he was, you know, always ambitious like that, trying to think of big things that he could do, you know, big things that were bold, and I don't know.
Yeah.
So I guess that leads me to, I talked a lot, so that leads to the first song, starting off my music block with one of my songs. Now, this song is very dated in its, even though it is from the 80s, early 90s. In the early 90s, I started interviewing my grandparents about their life experiences on tape, on a cassette. And my grandfather started telling me these stories reluctantly, because he didn't want to tell them. So this is my grandfather on my mother's side, and they grew up in Columbia, South Carolina, and they were born in 1917 and 1919 respectively, my grandparents, and they lived through, I mean, my grandfather saw cross burnings, he saw people getting whipped, he experienced the South, the racism that we all think of when we think of race, like very overt kind of Southern, lynching and all that sort of stuff. He experienced it, so he had a very different perspective on it than my dad, who grew up in the city in South Philly, where the racism was more institutionalized. So he was telling me these stories, and I've always felt like I didn't fit in anywhere. So I came up with this little hook called "Don't Fit In," and I made this sort of fictitious character that traveled around the world looking for a place where he wouldn't be judged by how people perceived him. And I say it's dated because the last part of the song, he goes to South Africa, and at that point, South Africa wasn't free. So, so it's a little old. And then there is a a very cheesy element to the song that it opens with a sample from Lethal Weapon 2. Because I don't know why I love those cheesy cop buddy movies, but that's what's there. So here it is. Don't Fit In from me.
Listen to your friend here. He knows what he's talking about. I don't think you really want to go to South Africa.
Why not?
Because you're black.
Teardrop falls on the face of a boy whose skin is black. His grandfather told him of cross-burning, showed him the whip, scars on his back. He said, boy, you better stay on your side of the tracks. But when the sun went down, he packed his bags to get out of town. Gonna keep this young boy down, but don't fit in. It don't fit in. You can keep on knocking, boy, they ain't never gonna let you in. Where do you go when nobody wants to know you and everybody wants to show you? You don't fit in. He went to Bensonhurst and they chased him out into the street. He went to Los Angeles, some cops decided to beat him in the head. He went to South Africa to find his homeland. They said you cannot stand where the white man stands. And when the sun went one day, no man or woman shall raise their fist in anger because of fear of another man or woman's race, creed, color, or sexual preference. And that would be cool. Real cool.
Very powerful song, Rodney.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it sounds really great.
Thank you very much. Yeah, wow. When I hear that song, it always takes me back to like just where I was at that point in my life, and it's like that sense of just not knowing where you fit in and who you are, and it's also to see how much has changed, even though we're still in the midst of the fight. I had no idea that we would, one day elect Barack Obama president, and just so many things in the world would be different, and South Africa would be free. I think right around the time I wrote this, I actually spent an afternoon too with Winnie Mandela, because I was teaching at Lincoln University, and she came to do a talk, and just a weird series of events. I ended up hanging out with her in the dressing room. I don't know how that happened, but that's the story of weird things that happened in my life. It's just happened to be in the right place at the right time, and had some interesting conversations with her about just South Africa and what her and her husband were doing at the time. But so that's also, I think, why there's that element of it sounding sort of there's that big openness to the song of where it sounds like sort of African, kind of. I don't know. Anyway, so the next block of songs, I am always moved by people who join the fight who don't have to. And that particularly means people who are not of color. And so the next block of songs is all about that. It's about people who figure out how to take a stand for something that in some ways, I think racism and race affects everyone, but not everybody owns up to that or acknowledges it. And, one of the things I was struck by a couple years ago, I went to the Omega conference, and I was acting as a reporter and interviewing people, and there was a panel discussion, and on the panel were some pretty prominent people. There was a rabbi for the Clintons, Michael Leonard, is that his name? Michael Rabbi?
Oh, I think I've heard him, but I don't remember his name.
Yeah. And Maya Angelou and Sonia Sanchez, and who you've heard me talk about before because I've gotten to know her a little bit, and some other notable prominent people who are progressive leaders and outspoken either in the arts or in other fields. But the one thing I was struck by was how everyone spoke for their cause and not for the others. And it always bothers me in movements, like how if I want to, I think that was the power of Martin Luther King. If I want to be free, then everyone has to be free. Not, well, I want to be free and I'm not going to worry about the rest of you. Now, to be clear, I'm not in any way besmirching Black Lives Matter, because I think that's a different thing.
Right.
But I do wish that there were a way that more people would stand up for the others' causes. And I think if that were to happen, things would move a lot faster. Mm-hmm. So that's
I think one inspiring example of that is the kids from Parkland who really reached out to Black Lives Matter as a movement and, recognized that this horrible thing that happened in their school once is the kind of violence that people of color are facing on a daily basis, and nobody pays or nobody was paying much attention to it. I think that somewhat that has changed post George Floyd, but still it's an ongoing battle to get people to recognize that there's a real problem.
Until it shows up on their front doorstep or it affects them, and
Right.
it's just not. It's hard to bring about real change if that's where everyone is. So this set of 3 songs is all about people who made moves to change that, or recognize it, or do something about it.
Excellent.
So we have Your Racist Friend from They Might Be Giants. We have something really, really special. The song Steals of the White Man I really wanted to play. It's from John McCutcheon, but it's very difficult to find a recording of it. And so we reached out to him, and he sent us an exclusive recording of him singing the song Steals of the White Man. He also let us know that he first learned it from Hazel Dickens, and she learned it from a collection of J. Barry Tolkien of the University of Oregon, who collected songs from an Indian in Nebraska named Yellow Man. And it's variously claimed by both Chickasaw and the Cherokee sources. But this song is so powerful, and we're so lucky that we have this exclusive version of Steals of the White Man from John McCutcheon. And Dragon to Butterfly from David Roth.
This is where the party ends. I can't stand here listening to you and your racist friend. I know politics bore you, but I feel like a hypocrite talking to you and
Alas, said an Indian, I once had a home in a fair forest glade where the wild deer did roam, where the sockeye feast on a festival day. But now the steels of the white man have took them away. I once had a mother, the pride of my youth, and a father who taught me the practice of truth. Now their spirits have left them as cold as the clay, and the steels of the white man have took them away. I once had a brother, the pride of the vale, and a sister whose cheeks were ruddy and pale, and I'd often join them in innocent play. But the steels of a white man have took them away. And now I'm alone, the last of my race. And I know in this world that I have no place. My friends and relations have all passed away, for the steels of a white man have took them away. And now I must follow the Great Spirit calls to the land of the blessed, where the brave never falls, to that blissful green shore and the cool forest glade, where the steels of the white man shall never invade.
It was early September in Lincoln, Nebraska. Two friends were conversing at dusk on a porch. One was all wrapped up in blankets and pillows, the other an old overcoat. Affection was easy to witness between them, the physical closeness, the tender exchange. The one in the coat gently stroking the other, who struggled but managed to talk just the same. He said, "Do you remember the day we met, Michael? I heard you were coming and I called many times. I didn't want someone like you to move in here. I wasn't used to your kind. But instead of returning my ignorant curses, you just kept on answering the phone. And you knocked on my door with a bucket of chicken the first time you came to my home." The two men were laughing now, shaking their heads with a sense of the passage about to take place. Larry, if someone had said we'd be friends, I'd have called them insane to their face. But you can't always tell what's inside of an apple, and you can't always trust what you see. Michael continued to wonder out loud after Larry had drifted to sleep. How a man can move mountains, a world can be turned, and the greatest of distances easily spanned, when the strength that's invested in making a fist is transformed into shaking a hand. Michael brought Larry back into the house, and then Michael's wife Julie helped Larry to bed. A lifelong diabetic, confined to a wheelchair, couldn't do much for himself anymore. So they'd taken him in to unravel the pain, how his father made fun of him planting the seed, and the root of the anger that grew so completely once strangled his heart like a weed. But a man can move mountains, a world can be turned, and the greatest of distances easily spanned, and the strength that's invested in making a fist is transformed into shaking a hand. Larry's last breath in his bedroom at Michael's came later that night with his friend at his side. Thank you was all he could whisper for changing a dragon to a butterfly. For Larry was once a white knight, the grand dragon with robes and with torches, with scorn and with hate. Michael, the rabbi who'd just moved to Lincoln with 2 open arms and with faith that a man can move mountains, a world can be turned, and the greatest of distances easily spanned, when the strength that's invested in making a fist is transformed into shaking a hand. When the strength that's invested in making a fist is transformed into shaking a hand.
So that was Your Racist Friend from They Might Be Giants, Steel of the White Man from John McCutcheon, and Dragon to Butterfly from David Roth. And boy, those lyrics in Dragon to Butterfly and the sentiment of it, like thinking at just the idea that a rabbi, a Jewish man, would help a grand wizard of the clan through that last part of life and transitioning into death and change his heart. It's very, very moving. So that leads me to my last little story, and this one's a little silly and funny, but I love the story. So right before the pandemic hit, I did a one-man show called How I Discovered I Was Black Because Everyone Keeps Reminding Me. And it's a sort of humorous look at my life and having parents that were assimilating. And but one of the end of the show, I talk about a recent experience that I think sort of sums up the ultimate, the confusion and weirdness of race. So I was at the airport flying to England, and we'll start by saying one of my favorite singers in the world, hands down, is Karen Carpenter. And, you know, as a musician who hangs out with other musicians from time to time, I always get a lot of crap for saying that. People are like, oh, she's so cheesy. And I'm like, but she's such a great drummer. And I said this to someone recently. She's such a great drummer. Like, she plays drums? Like, what are you talking about? I'm like, yeah, she's a great drummer. And also, I just love singers that sing with pure tone. I know there's all those great singers out there who do all sorts of theatrics and can do gymnastics with their voice and, you know, like run scales and all that sort of stuff. But someone who can interpret a song, that can sing 2 words and move you, that is what blows me away. And then whether the person has a great tone or not, I don't care. In this case, Karen Carpenter has amazing tone, but you know, someone like Bob Dylan doesn't have great tone, but boy, can he wreck you with lyrics. And and delivery and phrasing, and I would even see someone like Gil Scott-Heron doesn't have a great voice, but when he says a word, it's got gravitas. If I could be so pretentious. But
well, is partly what you're saying. A lot of these singers to me are people maybe who make you. They put the focus on the song instead of on themselves or on their voice. So they may have a great voice like Karen Carpenter, but what comes through is the song itself.
Right, the meaning of the song. And
right.
So I have this just a deep love for Karen Carpenter and an embarrassment that I love as a big black guy that I love Karen Carpenter so much. And in my brain, there's a little okay, I got to keep this secret. I can't let this out. So back to the story. I'm at the airport, and I'm sitting there waiting to get on the flight, and there is a black gentleman at the counter who is doing something at the counter, and I'm at a seat where we can see each other. There's nothing in the way. There's no more seats in the way of our eyesight. And so I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden over the loudspeaker comes a Carpenter song. And I'm trying not to make it look like I'm into it because I just don't want to be seen as that black guy. I'm sort of fronting in a way for the black guy that's in front of me. Like, yo, bro, I'm not a sellout or an Oreo or whatever. I'm down with the cause. Yeah. So I'm doing my best not to let the song seep into my body. But I'm a musician and I can't help it. But I'm doing a good job of being stoic. I'm sitting there still. And as the song is playing, for some reason the guy and I keep making contact. Our eyes keep connecting, and finally, he looks at me and he goes, Karen Carpenter is the shit. And I just had this big grin on my face. And I went, oh, the truth is the truth. And there's no reason to hide from it. So, in a weird way, for our race episode, here's my last song. The Carpenters.
We've only just begun to live. White lace and promises. A kiss for luck and we're on our way.
We've only begun.
Before the rising sun, we fly. So many roads to choose. We start out walking and learn to run.
And yet we've just begun.
Sharing horizons that are new to us. Watching the signs along the way. Talking it over, just the two of us. Working together day to day. Together. And when the evening comes, we smile. So much of life ahead. We'll find a place where there's room to grow.
And yes, we've just begun.
Sharing horizons that are new to us. Watching the signs along the way. Talking it over, just the two of us. Working together day to day. Together.
smile. So much of life ahead. We'll find a place where there's room to grow.
And yes, we've just begun.
All right.
Yeah.
You know, Rodney, when you were talking earlier about, people who don't have to stand up for people of color, but do, allies, I was thinking actually back on something I've heard as part of that Deeper Than the Skin show that Reggie Harris and Greg Greenway do. And one of the things that Reggie says in introducing Greg is saying that one of the reasons he wanted to do this with Greg is that he knows Greg is one of those white people who will speak up against racism even when there's nobody African American or no person of color in the room.
Yeah.
Like Reggie doesn't have to be there for Greg to care about it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. You are one of those people yourself too.
Well, I'm striving.
but yeah, I think that's the important thing too. Is that a friend of mine made a documentary a couple years, like maybe 20 years ago, where he got 6 people of color and 6 white people and asked them about race. And the thing that was so powerful is the white people never think about race until there's someone different around.
Mm-hmm.
But people of color think about it all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a luxury for white people. Well, that's the idea of white privilege, right?
Yep. Uh-huh.
It's not a question for people of color whether they have to think about race, and that's part of I think the point of your show, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That you keep being forced to think about it.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. So you had some stories you were going to share.
Yeah. If that's okay.
Yeah.
And obviously I had very different experience because I did not grow up in your skin. I don't live in your skin, Rodney, and I grew up in the Midwest in Ann Arbor, Michigan, which is, people, if they know things about Ann Arbor, sometimes what people associate with Ann Arbor is that it has a lot of progressive politics. The SDS started there, and, they have had this progressive $5 pot law and things like that. But, the other thing about Ann Arbor, a lot of times people don't know if they're not from the area, is it's an extremely segregated town. It's a pretty big college town, like 150,000 people. And there's a significant African American population there, always has been, but when I was growing up, it was extremely segregated. One thing that I grew up with, and it's part of the reason why I end up doing this show with you, Rodney, is that my parents were very involved in the civil rights movement, and that's part of how I grew up with this link in my mind between social justice and music, because obviously the civil rights movement was a real singing movement. And so, my parents were directly involved in marches and desegregation drives and things like that. And they went to Antioch College, and Martin Luther King was their commencement speaker, which I thought was amazingly cool. Anyway, so, I grew up with a lot of their stories and their sort of oral history about that movement, and listening to a lot of the music of the movement, and that sense of that there were a lot of white people who were allies, who were part of the freedom rides, and even people who were killed, like the 2 of the 3 in Mississippi that Mississippi Burning is about, and stuff like that. And a lot of the white people were Jews, as our family is, and that also, I think, gave our family some sense of sort of tribal pride in being part of that movement. And it's been sad to see how the alliances between African Americans and Jews have sort of eroded over time, and a lot of those connections that were made of common cause have not always held strongly. But anyway, so when I was a kid, a lot of the ways that I learned about race and about racism and about the civil rights movement was through music. And I found a lot of the music of the civil rights movement to be particularly inspiring. And I remember one time, actually, I was in Washington, D.C. with my parents, and we just happened upon this reunion of the SNCC Freedom Singers that was happening in one of the Smithsonian museums. I think I even came across once on TV on PBS a documentation of that very reunion that I think we were in the audience for. It was incredible, just amazing. And the Freedom Singers had these amazing voices. Bernice Johnson Reagan went on to form Sweet Honey in the Rock out of that. And so I have a couple songs I wanted us to listen to. I actually had to digitize these from an LP of stuff from Newport in 1963. So I thought we could listen to a little sandwich of Freedom Singers, Pete Seeger Freedom Singers. And the first Freedom Singers song is Fighting for My Rights, which is actually new words to a Ray Charles song. A lot of the old freedom songs had been based on spirituals. But the Freedom Singers, one of their innovations was to start to, base things on more current music, on soul and on R&B and on even rock and roll and stuff like that. So Fighting for My Rights is based on a Ray Charles song. And then we'll hear Pete Seeger doing We Shall Overcome with the Freedom Singers as part of the chorus at Carnegie Hall. And then back to the Freedom Singers with a doo-wop-y kind of song, sometimes called Dog, Dog, sometimes called I Love Your Dog, I Love My Dog.
Now I'm tired of segregation, and now I want my equal rights. Well, respect and education, well, not total integration. Now that's why I'm fighting for my rights. Oh, I'm fighting for my rights. Yes, I'm fighting for my rights. Yes, I'm fighting for my rights. Now myself, it had no windows, so the air, it couldn't come through. And I felt so hot and stuffy that I didn't know what to do. I was fighting for my rights. Oh, I was fighting for my rights. I was fighting for my rights. I was fighting for my rights. Now my mom, she done told me now on a dying bed. Now if my son don't get his freedom, I had rather see him dead. That's why I'm fighting for my rights. Whoa, I'm fighting for my rights. Yes, I'm fighting for my rights. Yes, I'm fighting for my rights. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I know that I do believe. Oh, we shall overcome some. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand someday. Oh, live in my heart. I do believe we shall overcome some. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace.
shall overcome some. The whole wide world around, the whole wide world around, the whole wide world around, the whole wide world around. Someday, folks, verse was made up down in Montgomery, Alabama. Says we are not afraid. And here you and I up here, and like every human being in the world, we have been afraid. But you still sing it. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. And I'd especially like to dedicate this verse to an old friend of mine. I think she's the oldest person here tonight. Aunt Alice Pollitzer. 93 years old, and she came to sing with us. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. Today, I'm talking about a black dog. I'm talking about a white dog. I'm talking about a coon dog. I'm talking about a rabbit dog. Hold him, dog. Hold him, dog. Hold him, dog. Lord, hold him, dog. I love your dog. But then why can't we sit on the apple tree? You walk with me. Oh, you walk. Talk with me, well, why don't you hold my hand and tell me, you understand now? Can't you see that you and me would be so happy? Sit on the apple tree. My little dog, it was a plan one day. Dog, 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 down in the middle by a bundle of hay. Dog, 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 another little dog, it came along. Dog, 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 said, let's get together and eat this bone. Dog, 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 then why can't we sit on the apple tree? You walk with me, oh, you walk, talk with me. Well, why don't you hold my hand and tell me you understand now? Can't you see that you and me would be so happy? Sit on the apple tree. My dog, I love your dog, and your dog, I love my dog, and my dog, I love your dog. Dog.
I'm talking about a black dog. I'm talking about a white dog. I'm talking about a coon dog. I'm talking about a rabbit dog. All them dogs. All them dogs. All them dogs. Lord, all them dogs. I love my dog. And then a white can be sit on the apple tree.
So I love that Dog Freedom Singers song. It's so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
I just heard actually Sparky and Rhonda Rucker do a 2-person version of that, and they did a very nice job. But I don't think anything quite matches up to the Freedom Singers way of doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like I said, I grew up in Ann Arbor, which was very segregated, and I remember having some close relationships with kids who were African American. I remember one friend especially who I was really good friends with. And I was a pretty little kid, and I was thinking about him because I was thinking about how racism can kind of infect everything, and how it's sort of the air we breathe, and even with well-meaning, good intentions and stuff, white people, and myself included, can fall into ugly behaviors. And I was thinking of this story of this time with this friend Joey that I've felt ashamed of ever since, which I think we were playing soccer and he did something that made me angry, and I was so enraged with him, so beyond what it was that. And I have no idea what it was that he did. I don't think we did anything wrong really at all. But I'm just saying, like, my anger, and I looked back at that and I thought, where did that come from? Why was I so angry at him? And I'm, like I said, I'm ashamed of it because I feel like that is an example of how those racist feelings were in me, in spite of everything that my parents had taught, in spite of everything that I wanted to be. And I know a lot of times I've been in anti-racist workshops where people say guilt is a totally worthless thing. And I have trouble with that, partly because I'm Jewish. And guilt is such a part of me. And maybe you can relate being Catholic, Rodney. But, and I also just think that, and I'm not saying that they're wrong, but I feel like for me, it's a little bit like, how a little kid deals with a hot stove or something like that. Sometimes you have to be burned and feel that pain and realize I'm not going to do that again because that was not good. That didn't make me feel good. And so I feel like guilt can be helpful, at least if we see it as a learning experience. So if I did this thing and I feel ashamed of it, I feel guilty about it, then hopefully that's gives me the impulse to not do that thing again. I don't want to feel that way again. I don't want to, carry that guilt. So I don't know. Do you have an opinion about that, Rodney?
I think that the acknowledgement of the thing is awesome, and if it fosters a transformation or a change or growth, that's also great. But I think that the danger is, Well, I'll share a quick story. I know it's your turn to share stories.
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
So I was working in a nonprofit. We were going into schools and working in some of the tougher neighborhoods in Philly, and they were predominantly African American. And I don't know, one day we were at this school, and this kid who hadn't been in school for maybe 4 or 5 days showed up. He was all dirty. His clothes were, dirty. He looked just beaten up, and you could see that the life was draining out of his eyes. And this was like a 5th grade class. It was a little kid. And so we were doing some kind of drawing exercise. I don't remember exactly what it was, but we were doing this drawing exercise. And a kid who's sitting next to him, either on purpose or mistakenly, picked up what he perceived to be his pencil and he jumped on the other kid and just started punching and beating on him brutally, like brutal for a little kid to jump on someone and pound on them that quickly and that fast. And so I had a staff of people who worked with me, and we all separated him. And I remember looking at him and going, I know you're in something, like I said, I don't remember exactly what I said, but I said, I know you're in pain and I know something's hurting you, but you can't do that or they win. You know, the people who don't want you to succeed, they win. And then he hugged me and broke down crying, like it just, like, everything just broke for him, and he wouldn't let go. I mean, he was just holding on to me and hugging me, and then eventually he let go. And on my staff, I had 2 child therapists who took him out into the hall so the class could continue doing the drawing exercise, and they did some processing with him, and then they took him down to the guidance counselor, who also was doing some kind of, you did some more support for him. He didn't get in trouble. And somewhere in the middle of the day, I started crying, and I could not stop. I was just crying. I just could not stop crying. Like, we had to do a presentation that afternoon, and I was on stage just holding back these tears. It was just insane. And I got home, and it now had been maybe 7 hours since the incident happened, and I was still crying, like uncontrollably sobbing. And so I called up my therapist. Yes, first world problems. I called my therapist, and she says to me, okay, this was very moving, but you have to stop crying. You're so indulging yourself, and it's so inappropriate. And I go, what do you mean? What? But it hurt. She goes, you get to come home to your nice apartment that you drove in your car, and that you're going to have a perfectly safe, fine evening tonight with no problems at all. Where is that kid going? You do him a disservice by sitting here indulging your emotion. It's privilege. Stop it. Mm-hmm. It's horrible. And I went, oh, you're right. Like, I'm fine. There's no, like, this is all just so indulgent. And if I want to be moved by what happened or changed or transformed, that's great. Like, I'm more aware. I could be strategic. I could use that energy to do something else, and maybe further make a change in other kids' lives or something. But for me to just sit there for 7 hours and cry is just so indulgent and privileged.
Right.
So I
think that that really points to the reason why in some of the anti-racism workshops that I've been in, they've said this idea that it's not helpful. Guilt is not helpful. But I guess what you started off saying is the side of it that I think that I'm emphasizing. So wallowing in your guilt and not having it lead anywhere, that is not helpful and could be seen and could be described as self-indulgent.
Yeah.
But I think the idea I was getting at was more, if you can use your guilt to motivate yourself to change and to act, then it's helpful. So I don't see it as just automatically a bad thing to feel guilt or to feel shame. It's just how you direct it, and maybe how much it's about you and how much it's about directing it outwards. Yeah. So that you actually try to change things. I don't feel like comfortable discounting all possible positive outcomes from feeling guilty, I guess, is what I would say. And I just have to speak personally. I know personally that, wanting to, like say I'm in a situation, which I've definitely been in, where somebody has said or done something racist. If I have not spoken out against it, I feel guilty about that. I feel ashamed. And that's part of what motivates me to think ahead and to try to strategize of what will I do the next time so I don't feel that, and it's not only so I don't feel that, it's also to do the right thing. But I think that's a part of it emotionally for me anyway. And so, I know some people might say, well, that's not helpful, but I actually personally find it helpful sometimes. So that's why I'm making the point.
I also think, and we'll get hate mail if I say it. not that you have to let yourself off the hook, but I think that life is an evolution. I was talking to some people about the guy who wrote Amazing Grace, and you know the story that he was a slave trader. He was and he had this moment of grace, and it took him 15 or 20 years to go from a slave trader to an abolitionist. And some people would say, well, why did it happen faster? Like, why did it take so long? But that's looking back through the lens of now. And, people have those moments where they see something and it takes time. We're human, if it's deprogramming, you want to call it, or if it's like having that guilt present is not a bad thing, and if it inspires you to keep moving and growing, that's fine. But the other side of it is, I think that there are those people who will go down the rabbit hole of indulgence.
Right, definitely true.
Yeah. So
I was thinking about the one really pivotal event in my life in terms of understanding more about race, more about the history of the way that African Americans in particular have been treated in this country, was when the miniseries Roots came out in the 70s. And I know that there have been some criticisms of that more recently, and there was a reboot of that. But I still think it's worth recognizing what a cultural impact that had, and maybe especially on white people, because I'm sure lots of African American people knew this history plenty well, although I do think that it did fill in some gaps for some people, and also inspired among all kinds of people a search for their roots, and the sort of genealogy. It started off a whole movement, I think. But but I really do think that there was a lot of powerful stuff in that, and in my memory, I had not realized that there was the original Roots series that only went up to just after the Civil War, and then there was another series. I always put those together in my memory as one thing. So when I rewatched them, more recently, we watched the first, original series, and it got to the end, and I was like, that's not the end. I was like really upset because I was like, that's not the end. But where's when they come back from World War I, and when and all the all these different things, and that were really, I think in some ways that second one, the Roots, the Next Generation, or whatever it's called, was at least as powerful as the first, because it had things about lynchings, and it had things about what happened to service people when they came back from the World Wars, and there was just a lot in that second one, and it all gets all the way up to when Alex Haley is, writing the book for Malcolm X, and meeting the Nazi leader played by Marlon Brando, and all these kinds of things like that. So anyway, I think that whatever the faults of those series were, I just want to recognize that they had a huge impact on me, and kind of schooled me in a lot of things, and there was a real power to a lot of those stories that came out through that. Also was a who's who of actors, both black and white at the time, right? I mean, they were just incredible casts. And anyway, so just, to recognize that, I thought it'd be fun to listen to Quincy Jones' theme from this that I found. And so let's hear that. All right. So, and I was thinking about that miniseries again a little bit, and I was thinking about one of the things, there's this whole concept. I think that the writer Adichie talks about this, about where does the story start, and who gets to start the story, and I think the fact that goes back to a depiction of sort of everyday life in Africa before getting to slavery, it was kind of a new and revolutionary thing in our U.S. mainstream culture that, so often the story started with slavery.
Right.
And that, of course, has a certain sense to it. Like, there was no life before that for people who were black, and so I think this reframes that in an important way. And somebody actually made that comment to me when I was doing a workshop at an education conference about race and sort of political music and stuff like that, and I started with Underground Railroad songs, and they were like, you really need to go back before that, because there's a certain message that you're giving from doing that. And I heard that, and I next time I do that workshop, I'm going to do it differently.
Cool. Yeah, boy, Roots was such a big thing for me, and that song in particular, it's one of the first pieces of music I learned to play on the piano. Was the theme song to Roots, and it's one of the first things I ever figured out by ear.
Oh, cool.
And I think I remember recording it from the TV, and then sitting at my little keyboard and playing the cassette over and over again, just play, like literally record it in the room from the television on the cassette player recorder.
Yeah,
and then playing it back.
We had much fewer options for getting audio back then.
So that piece of me, and listening to it just now, it's really God, Quincy is so brilliant. How the theme works as an African melody, but it also works as a Celtic melody, and it works as a sort of mid-20th century pseudo jazz theme. I mean, it's like very interesting how it's really not interesting. It's amazing how that theme can just adapt itself through sort of musically telling the story of Roots, which is pretty amazing. Also, you mentioned the second generation Roots. I was just looking at that recently, and I don't know why in my mind the second one doesn't seem as acted as well as the first one, but you're right, it's got tons of people in it. But I was I'm in the process of working on a film right now that is about the relationships between blacks and Jews, and there's a scene in there I was just using when I was talking to the producers and some of the other team, just that I thought was pretty powerful in the second generation, when the shop owner has to explain to Alex Haley's soon-to-be father-in-law. It's Alex Haley's dad's father-in-law. He has to explain to him why the white people don't like him because he's Jewish. And I thought that was a powerful learning moment in that series, because it's the beginning of the that relationship that you talk about, and then the other thing I was thinking of too, you talked about the power of Roots on TV. In doing my research on that, one of the things that blew me away was I don't know if you know this story, but the day that John Lewis marched across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, which I think is March 7th, 63, I think, or 64. I have to look it up again. Don't quote me, people out there.
Okay.
But that night, the film version of The Trials of Nuremberg premiered on ABC TV, and there were 47 million people watching, and the news broke in with the shots of the people on the bridge, walking over the bridge, being attacked by dogs and beaten, and that changed basically the whole country, but particularly amped up or got more Jewish people involved in the civil rights movement. That one thing, because the march that we all think about over the Edmund Pettus Bridge is the one with Martin Luther King, which actually they didn't go over the bridge, but the one with John Lewis had about if I remember correctly in my reading, it had about 900 people, and the one with Martin Luther King had 7,000 or 8,000 people, and it was a multicultural, multi-ethnic march.
So that juxtaposition of the Nuremberg trials with what was happening right then, I can imagine, had people making connections.
Yes.
And, yeah, that's. I never heard that before. That's really fascinating. Yeah. Well, so you mentioned earlier South Africa, and the movement, the anti-apartheid movement, was a particularly powerful movement in my life. I had always sort of wanted to be more involved in activism, but for some reason it took me getting to college to really get immersed in, becoming more of an activist. And at that point in the mid 80s, the big campus issue really was anti-apartheid and divestment from companies that do business in South Africa. And I got very involved in that, and got in trouble, good trouble, as
John Lewis
would say. At least I hope it was good. No, it was good trouble. And I actually I came very close to going on a hunger strike, which I got talked out of doing at the last minute, which is probably good, because I kind of doubt that tactic would have worked, and all I would have done would have been to hurt myself. But still, I'm just saying, I was very committed. And one of my wife Jenny's and my first dates was sleeping in a shanty town we had erected at Oberlin College as part of that whole thing. And so a lot of the music that was related to that was particularly moving and powerful to me. And so why don't we listen to a couple things that are connected to that. First, the great group Sweet Honey in the Rock that I mentioned before, that was founded by Bernice Johnson Reagan, who had been in the Freedom Singers. This is a song that kind of connects up different situations and movements in the world. Chile, your waters run red through Soweto. Great kind of early song of intersectionality, I think you could call it. Yeah. And then you also mentioned Gil Scott-Heron a little bit ago, and I thought we could hear his contribution to that Sun City album that many, many people are on. And little Steven Van Zandt was one of the, kind of originators of the whole concept. But it was a very interesting collection of people, from Miles Davis and the Fat Boys and all kinds of, people from many different genres, U2. Anyway, so we'll hear Let Me See Your I.D. from that.
Chile, your waters run red through Soweto. If you've heard about Chile, then you've heard about Soweto. There the blood of oppression runs deep as the mines. Chile, your waters run red through Soweto. The hands that choked the spirit of Allende pull the trigger on the children in a muddy Soweto street. Chile, your waters run red through Soweto. The hands that turn the key in 10 Wilmington jail cells put young Steve Mitchell in a dusty hill grave. Chile, your waters run red through Soweto. The hands of oppression are the hands of hunger. The waters of Chile fill the banks of Cape Fear. I said, Chile, your waters run red through Soweto. The same hands, same
Everybody uses black and white to try to draw the line between wrong and right. But if you use your eyes to really see, we don't see realistically. Because skin that's white is really pink, so either you can't see or I can't think. Skin that's black is really brown, but that don't make the world go round. To put a color on skin, to me, is a sin. That's why apartheid must never never win. We must put an end to this, my friend, and it should never be allowed to happen again. It's time to wake up and do some good to try to see each other the way we should, because looking at the people, I sometimes find that Sun City is in the mind.
I was watching TV the other night, and who should appear but, like Walter Concrete with the blues. And it occurred to me how much of our vocabulary we seem to get from TV nowadays, calling things whatever they call them, even if it's correct. The first thing that occurred to me was like third world, like you ask somebody from here, like, where's the third world? They might say, oh yeah, man, I know, it's a disco. You go about 3 blocks and take a left. Or they might tell you the third world is a new health food restaurant. I know the first time I heard there was trouble in the Middle East, I thought they was talking about Pittsburgh. Let me see your ID. Let me see your ID.
Let's get down to the real nitty-gritty. Talk about the crimes in Sun City. Let's get down to the real nitty-gritty. Talk about the crimes in Sun City. A city of diamond, city of gold, city of sorrows with horrors untold. But even a fool should be able to tell. Sun City, a charade for hell.
It's the death. Called genocide. People dying to defeat. Called apartheid. South Africa. Starvation right here. Politicians and leaders living in fear. South Africa. From coast to coast. Colored people got the least. White people got the most.
And the word casualties comes up a lot. And in South Africa, they seem to make it feel like there's a battle between isms going on, between one good ism and one bad ism. But what they're talking about is nightly. South Africans died, casualties. There were 8 more casualties in South Africa. Nothing casual about dying. Nothing casual about standing for freedom. My grandmother used to say, if you don't stand for something, you'll go for anything. We stand against apartheid. Stand against apartheid. Let me see you, ID. Let me see you, ID.
Well, we're sick and tired of what we heard. Think apartheid is quite absurd. Prejudice is the reason people have died. Yes, prejudice stands for apartheid. So we all get together to lend a hand to bring people to peace all across the land. We've got to stop running like a river truck, and all this mess has got to stop.
I had never met anyone from Southern Africa until I started going to school. I was going to Lincoln University down in Pennsylvania. There were South African refugee students there who were, many of them were athletes, and we started to compare experiences and stuff. And they were telling me that when you walk around in South Africa, you got to carry this little black book with you that tells everybody whether you're supposed to be in a given area or not. Damn, there's a parallel in my life, because I got to do that when I go to Philly. Let me see you, I do.
We are waiting for the day that we fade. Some people say that's a Caucasian race. Some people say that's a Mongolian race. Some people say that's a Negro race. We don't believe in a multiple race. All we know is the human race. We are saying, remember last today.
There will be a time when apartheid's a crime, and the color factor won't bother the mind. The majority rules against the fools, and all those who oppose will become uncool. I'm talking about a place they call Sun City, Las Vegas in the desert, in a town without pity, South Africa. Yes, the motherland. There are no human rights for the African. Cause Sun City's bright lights melt down their rights, and ain't nothing else to do but stand up and fight. Now if I ruled the world and was king on the throne, I'd stop this mess in my sweet home.
You see, the thing about I ain't going to Sun City is that somehow by the South African government, Sun City is described as though it's somewhere else, not connected to South Africa or apartheid. It's like somebody in Manhattan trying to describe the Bronx to you as another country, as though it is no longer connected to New York. Let me see you, ID.
That it's all in their conscience, it's all in their minds, that's all in their hand. To fight against apartheid, South Africa must be free. Equality and justice, the people's liberty. Except for no money,
of a place and city. USA, we won't play.
Other night I was watching TV again and I seen that Falwell had been a representative of the American people over in South Africa, over there taking a ball for somebody. Somebody in here said, hey, what about the separation between church and state? I said, especially this church and that state, we stand against apartheid. Stand against apartheid.
Let me see your ID. Let me see your ID.
Yeah, politicians think they slip by shaking your hand and then they hold you back as much as they can. They try to keep you weak from getting strong because they know if they're strong, you're gonna change what's wrong. Ban my voice, ban it now, like Stevie Wonder. I'ma speak out loud, 'cause where you live is where you stand, and you shouldn't get checked by any man. Even if they got a stick in their hand, that still don't mean that they're in command.
We're the three fat boys, and we're here to say we're gonna stop apartheid in our own way.
South Africa. South Africa.
There's some really great pointed humor in that. Let me see your ID, right, Rodney?
Yeah. Yes. Uh-huh.
Gil Scott-Heron could really get those zingers in there. I always loved that bit about, first time I heard them talking about trouble in the Middle East, I thought they were talking about Pittsburgh.
Yes. Well, my favorite still is Whitey on the Moon.
Very early on.
Yeah. I love it. It always makes me laugh. So we've solved. So in this past hour and a little bit, we've solved all the problems of race, and we can all go on and be happy.
Oh yeah, of course. Well, I wanted to mention that there's some great work being done these days, and Rodney and I have talked before about an organization we're both part of called the Children's Music Network, and I think that people within the Children's Music Network are really passionate about trying to address some of these issues. And actually, I'm going to a meeting tonight of sort of white anti-racist activity. And it's not only for white people, but, it's recognizing the fact that anti-racism, in a way, is particularly the job of white people. Like, we need to take responsibility. We need to work on this. And so that's what the point of
that would be pretty funny if it was a white anti-racist group that didn't let black people in.
Right. Well, I don't know about funny would be the right word. It would definitely be funny, ironic, not funny.
I don't know. I think it's funny.
Well, earlier you mentioned how much has changed, and the election of Barack Obama and stuff. But of course, people are often pointing out also how so many things have not changed, and how there were a lot of people who acted as if when Obama became president we had reached a post-racial era, and obviously, unfortunately, that's not true. So not to belittle how important some of those things are, but if there's anything the last 4 years has sort of exposed, especially to white people, is just how much work there is to be done, and that
but I think that there's your point. You said exposed to white people. I think that people of color knew that strain, yes, that it's been there forever. I mean, like when I looked at the riot, the insurrection, I was looking at people I went to high school with.
Wow.
Like that wasn't a group of it wasn't a group of 20 or 30 somethings who were angry and ready to overthrow the government. It was people our age who were ready to overthrow the government. And I know those people from high school. And I know those people. It's no secret. I talk about I'm a big Howard Stern fan, and one of the things that has been interesting over this period is how many people call into his show who thought he was like them, and now are turning against him because they were like the people who marched, and they don't understand why he's not with them. They and it's right. Interesting. Again, in saying that, it's that strain that there's always been that part running through America, but I think it would do us a disservice if we didn't recognize how much has changed. And I think part of the vitriol on the other side, on that, and when I say the other side, I don't necessarily mean Republicans. I mean people who want to see all the progress or progressiveness of the past 50, 60 years erased,
right?
Is that they are fearing extinction,
right?
And
right. Yeah. Well, and I think the thing you were saying a moment ago too, I mean, when I'm feeling optimistic, I think of the things like the seeming, white supremacist takeover of the GOP as a last gasp, as a desperate measure, because they, like you said, see themselves as nearing extinction. That's when I'm feeling optimistic. I can see it that way. And I think there's a lot of good arguments for that. But and I've heard descriptions of saying, when does like a cornered animal, or when does an animal fight the most viciously? When it's cornered, when it knows it's like the end.
Yeah.
But the other side of it, of course, is, we both know the long history of this and the times when it's felt like, I think a lot of people have more recently learned about Reconstruction and that period, and that great series that was done relatively recently, and taught a lot of people about stuff. That taught me some things that I did not know, definitely. And I think to know that soon after the Civil War there were all of these African American people elected to fairly high positions in legislatures and stuff like that, and then years later had to fight again just for the right to vote, and today fighting for the right to survive still, in the face of police murders and stuff like that. So, I think there's ways of looking at it both ways, of feeling like, yes, we've made a lot of progress, and that, this hatred and this white supremacy that we're seeing is on its way out. But there's also that danger. I mean, we came dangerously close to having Trump in again for another 4 years, which I think would have really solidified a lot of that. So it's hard for me to be too sanguine about where we are. I think that your optimism is well founded. I hope it's well founded, and I feel like that sometimes. But I have good days and bad days about this. So it's very, very challenging, I think, to all of us. And I think we like to think that this progress is sort of constant and we keep moving in the right direction. I don't always feel like we're that way, but but hopefully in the grand scheme that the arc of justice,
Well, I think that hopefully what people have learned is that democracy costs, and that you have to keep fighting for it every day, even when you make progress. So even when you blow people's mind and elect the first, I guess, African American president. I always struggle because he is mixed, but for purposes of race in this country, he's considered African American, and we're able to elect someone like that, and then the first African American vice president comes on the heels of someone trying to reverse all that. That doesn't mean the fight is over. And I think that's where the problem comes, is that people go, well, we've reached the plateau, we're done. No, we've reached the plateau, and the work never stops. It's for me, I liken it to learning about music. Like every time I learn something new, I go, oh my God, look how much more there is to learn. Whoa, it's endless. I had no idea. It's like the universe. It just goes on and on and on.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's also something that a lot of white people are kind of waking up to, that whereas maybe they used to think I can learn about racism and then be done. I think a lot more white people are recognizing that this is an ongoing thing that we need to keep learning, and the sense about what racism is has changed in a way for white people. And again, I keep saying that because I think people of color have known these things forever. But I when I was growing up, racism was often defined as something very overt. It was the KKK. It was hating people with a different color skin, or at least directly discriminating, not letting them swim in the pool, or things like that. And I think people today recognize it as a much more pervasive system of privilege and of centering whiteness and all these kinds of things. So that's a different concept. And I know a lot of people who've been involved in civil rights activities and anti-racist activities in the past, including myself, have really had to try to adjust to, we thought we knew what we were talking about, but it's changed and we don't know what we're talking about anymore. And that was definitely a struggle for me. I was pretty, I know I've been involved in this for a long time, and then I definitely have had my comeuppance a number of times and felt like I really actually am pretty clueless, and I really have to go back to the drawing board and be schooled, and particularly, I know it's not your job, for instance, Rodney, or any other person of color to teach me what I should know, but I also appreciate the ways in which you and other people have done that anyway, even though it's not your job.
Well, thank you very much, David. And I also think that the bigger picture, we live in a culture where we are so eager to get to the point or the end or see the result of or the prize, like all those things, when this is, as I said earlier, it's just an ongoing process, and we're it stands to reason that we would see things different, because those things that we fought against, I was 5, the things that were fought against in the 60s and early 70s, we won. Those things are, there are laws in place that allow me to live where I live. And there are laws in place that allow me to go places and do things that, it would be illegal to stop me to do. But that doesn't mean now the next step is, to not only that it's illegal, but now see if we can change how those thoughts and feelings and ideas are communicated, and how they keep going through, like how they're institutionalized in the culture. How can we change those? It's a continuing, and I think particularly when you reach a certain age and you've done it for so long, you see the fight as it's still the old fight, and it's hard to recognize the new fight. But I'm saying all this to say, I don't know if you need to go back to the drawing board. It's just, we're here. We've arrived at the place I was fighting to get to. Oh, okay. Well, now where do we go? Oh, you young people are leading us. Oh, okay. Well, that's cool. let's keep going. I'm with you. Cool. In fact, you lead. I'll support from behind this, because I'm walking a little slower now than I used to.
And really, that idea is not a new idea. I mean, I've heard people talk about the civil rights movement as being led by the children. And that people like Martin Luther King actually had to come along later and realize what the young people were saying and follow them, and there is a lot to that, that a lot of the older African-American leaders and ministers and stuff were later to come to some of these ideas. At first they were relatively cautious and, we don't want to make waves. And it was the young people who were really fired up and said, we're going to go out and risk our lives to change things. So that idea of the youth leading is maybe a constant in a lot of ways.
Yeah, well, think about it. John Lewis was 19 when he walked over the Edmund Pettus Bridge and was beaten. He was 19 years old.
Right. And there were people much younger, too, that were very involved. And, and not only as martyrs like those 4 girls who were killed in Birmingham, but, who were really active in the movement.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that they weren't active, but I'm just,
Yeah.
some people are famous as martyrs instead of as activists.
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
something we do too, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I was just thinking, in terms of getting back to my story. So the last part I wanted to mention is sort of as an adult, as a teacher, and also as a parent. We've been fortunate in our family. When our kids were little, we lived in Mount Airy, which is a very integrated community. Although one of the problems and one of the reasons we moved is that the schools are not reflective of the community, and a lot of people send their kids to private schools and now charter schools, in that area, and so they're not neighborhood schools. But our kids went to the neighborhood school, and they were among the only white kids in their classes. And generally that was a great experience for them. And I think had a lot of impact on them growing up. And but there was one instance where one of our sons was in a class where we found out that there was a girl who said she wouldn't play with him because he was white. It's kind of an interesting, in a way, reversal. Although I think it's important to recognize some people like to talk about reverse racism. And I think, we always have to recognize the greater system in play. And it's not at all the same, even though it's not, a great thing when there's exclusion in any direction. But I don't think it's at all the same when it happens that way as the other way, when the whole system is designed around excluding people of color. Anyway, in this situation, we happened to be coming in on a weekly basis to do music with the kids because they had no music teacher. And so we took this as an opportunity to teach this song by our friend Sarah Pirtle that's called The Colors of Earth, and that we thought was a really beautiful song. It's very poetic, but also very specific. And it also kind of puts skin color and color of eyes and hair in a different context, because it's comparing these things to the beautiful colors in nature. So instead of just black or white, and actually, nobody's actually black or actually white if you were just to talk about the literal colors, we're all lots of different shades of this, spectrum. It compares those colors to colors of, leaves and trees and stones and things like that. So it's a very poetic, beautiful kind of a construct. And so we used that song in that context and talked with the kids a bunch about race and about that and skin color and stuff like that. And it seemed like it actually had a positive effect on the dynamic in that class. Now, recently, I actually brought this song up in one of these discussions in CMN about children's music and race and stuff like that. And Sarah Pirtle herself, the songwriter of this, actually said, I'm not so sure about that song anymore in some ways, because it doesn't deal with the inequalities of the ways that people are treated. And a lot of people were sort of talking in that way. So it's an interesting thing, that I still think this is a beautiful song, and I think it's an effective song. I also think there's something right about what Sarah was saying, what other people were saying, that we do need to do more to address this and not just say, oh, there's all these differences and isn't it beautiful and we need to celebrate that, but also to recognize the inequities and the ways that, racism infects everything. I don't think every song has to do everything, though. So I think there's a place for this song, and then there's a place for songs that do that other work. So I don't know how other people feel about that, how Rodney feels about that.
I think that art is a snapshot of where we are in time, and I think that we evolve. And so like the song I started my set with that I wrote, Don't Fit In, I also said I thought that a lot of the stuff in it was dated, but that doesn't necessarily change whether it has impact or is meaningful. It's just, we're human, we're evolving, we're changing. It's all part of the journey.
So here's to evolution.
Yes.
We are made of the colors of earth. Each color is different, each color is true. We are made of the colors of earth. I love the colors that made you. When I look in the eyes of my friends, I can see topaz, I can see sky. true. We are made of the colors of earth. I love the colors that made you. Tell me the names of the colors of earth. The purple of eggplant, the orange of peach, the green and the black of the stones on the beach, and the sun on the mountain in the morning. We are made of the colors of earth. Each color is different, each color is true. We are made of the colors of earth. I love the colors that made you. I love the colors that made you.
You've been listening to Music for the New Revolution. I'm Rodney Whittenberg.
I'm David Heitler-Clevens.
Music for the New Revolution is produced at Melody Vision Recording Studios in Plymouth Meeting, Pennsylvania. Music for the New Revolution is written and produced by David Heitler-Clevens and Rodney Whittenberg.
And edited and co-produced by Ben Flax.
You can find us at musicforthenewrevolution.com or MFTNR. Like us on Facebook and follow our Spotify playlist.
And our podcasts can be found on SoundCloud and iTunes, and you can also be a patron, a supporter of our podcast on Patreon.
This is Music for the New Revolution.
Spend it all today and we